Hey everyone, afternoon and welcome back for the final keynote of the conference. We've got an international visitor here, all the way from Dublin, flying back just specifically to come to give his talk. Before I hand over to him, though, I just want to make a quick announcement, which I'm sure you're all aware of, about some travel problems. So I'd advise everyone to check their trains, because I gather Virgin trains have had some disruption. So, without further ado, I'm just going to hand you over to Gary, who will introduce himself, a clinical psychologist, and I'll let him give a much better description of what he does and what his talk's about.
Thanks very much, and thanks very much to the organising committee for inviting me to come and to meet you today, and to Alicia Renwick in particular. Very grateful for the opportunity. My name is Gary O'Reilly. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I work in University College Dublin, and I'm both an academic researcher and a practicing clinician. And I'm going to talk to you today about a project called Pesky gNATs, which is a computer game for young people that delivers cognitive behaviour therapy for young people, particularly with anxiety or mood-type difficulties. The gNATs of the title is a play on that CBT concept of negative automatic thoughts. So what I hope to do is to give you an introduction to some of the work that we've been doing. Hopefully that will be of interest to you. There are the overall aim of our project is this. We want to take evidence-based forms of mental health intervention, and we want to combine them with good quality technology, and we want to make that available to people on a sustainable, not-for-profit basis. So that's the kind of aim of the work that we're involved in. People always like to know who's funded this, or who owns it, and who are the beneficiaries of it. Well, the beneficiaries of it are the community. All of our technologies are owned by a company called Handak's Community Interest Company, and it operates on a not-for-profit basis for the good of the community. And that was co-founded by myself and by David Coyle, who's a computer scientist. And the funding for the games and apps that I'm going to show you has come from the SBRI. And it's also been supported by University College Dublin and University of Bristol. So it helps, I think, when people know that. There's kind of 4 points that I'd like to make during the course of the presentation. And I'm going to try and use one of our games or apps to illustrate each of those points in turn. So the first point that I'd like to kind of draw on or make, I suppose, really is, I think if you come to a conference, it's always nice if you can take home something with you that you can use on Monday morning. So I hope that for those of you who might work in an adult mental health or in an adolescent or child adolescent mental health context, that there might be some of our resources that you might find useful and would like to access. So I'm going to make particular reference to a mindfulness and relaxation app and workbook that we have available. So I'm going to use our mindfulness program to illustrate that. The second point that I'd like to make is that technology is inherently attractive, I think, in terms of the delivery of mental health interventions, because people like, particularly young people, like technology and its use, and it's very user-friendly and hopefully destigmatizing. But what I hope to illustrate for you is that it is all of those things, but we can also use technology to solve important problems in the delivery of mental health interventions. And I hope to illustrate that to you with our main kind of cognitive behaviour therapy computer game for children and adolescents, which is called Pesky gNATs. The third question, or point I'd like to address really, is this idea of, is there evidence that these kind of programs work? Are they better than no intervention? Are they effective in what they do? And I hope to illustrate that with reference to a third game in our suite, which is called Pesky gNATs, the Feel Good Island. And it's a CBT game for adults with an intellectual disability who have clinically significant anxiety or low mood. And finally, the fourth point that I hope that we get to is that these technologies have huge potential. And I'm going to just tell you a little bit about a game that we're currently working on, which is for people who are experiencing significant trauma. So that's Pesky gNATs, the Trauma Recovery Island. So hopefully we'll draw on each of those. I hope too, from just listening to the kind of presentations at the conference to date, I hope that some of the themes that I've heard people discuss in terms of that importance of therapeutic relationship, the importance of destigmatizing user-friendly types of intervention, and the reality of trauma in people's lives will be at least touched on in some way by some of the things that I'm going to mention to you. So that's the plan. So take the first one then is this idea that hopefully there's a freebie from the conference that you can take away with you. My interest in this area came from this. I was working with young people and I was trying to explain the cognitive model to them. And I would give what I thought was a reasonable explanation, and they would kind of look at me blankly and say, what on earth are you talking about? And so I began just to develop some kind of worksheets and workbooks for young people to use that hopefully tried to listen to the kind of things they were interested in, but made those ideas more accessible to them. So this is a CBT workbook, We still make this workbook available for free through our website, so if you're interested in this kind of user-friendly kind of workbook for young people, it's on our website. If you go and visit us at pesky.com, there's a link there that you can contact us, and we'll send you a free copy of that workbook. I think we've given away something in the region of 20,000 copies of that workbook at this point, and it's available in a few different translations as well. It's available in Arabic, Polish, German, Slovakian, Slovenian, and there's a partial Spanish version there as well. So if you'd like to have a look at that, you'd be very welcome. The second piece of technology then that we have is this. We have a mindfulness app for young people, and so this is available to everybody for free through Google Play or the iTunes Store. It has 8 different mindfulness or relaxation skills built into it, so if you are interested, you can go to the store and download it. If you like it, then you can share it with your clients as well. That's an example of our kind of breathing kind of regulation skill exercise that's been playing on the screen there, so that might be of interest. And also we have a website which is linked to our mindfulness app and computer game, and it's mindfulnats.com, and it has a range of different kind of video-based exercises there, plus there's a workbook for mindfulness and relaxation skills. So if you want a taster, or if you want to follow up on some of the things that I'm going to kind of introduce you to, hopefully there might be things of interest to you there. The second point that I'd like to make is this, that you can use these technologies to solve important problems in the delivery of effective mental health services. It's interesting if you look at the relationship between technology and mental health intervention delivery. I think the most obvious and most frequent thing that people have done with technology and mental health is to build an online program for something. And I think the problem that people are trying to address in these online programs is a problem of reach. How do we make services or interventions which have an evidence base available to a greater number of people? And a really obvious way to do that is that we put something online, and then we have a widespread accessibility for that. And there are loads of really good programs online that work very effectively and have that really good reach associated with them. But we also know that these programs have limitations as well, that we need to do things that address the absence of a therapist or a therapeutic contact if we want to make people more engaged in these programs and less likely to drop out from those programs. But this has been the most frequent use of technology and mental health. We were interested in doing something different. We were interested in not having something online in the absence of a therapist, but we were interested in what is the role of technology within a typical therapeutic encounter. So a person experiencing a difficulty goes to meet a mental health professional, and in that therapeutic relationship, which we know is what we think is a vital part of what works when therapy works, is what technology could we associate with that might be helpful. And we were interested in 3 pieces of technology, really. The first is we were interested in the online, the range of online, the role of online technology to deliver interventions to therapists that therapists can use, and the therapists can access our technologies through an online system, but also the role of the internet for the training of professionals on how to use our materials. So we weren't kind of forgetting about an online world completely. But the main piece of technology that we were interested in terms of dropping into that therapeutic relationship is, could we build computer games that a young person could play with a therapist that might be part of the delivery of an effective intervention? So that's one of the, I suppose, the difference between what we were trying to do, was to design those computer games that are played with a mental health professional as opposed to in isolation from a mental health professional. And then the third piece of technology that we were interested in was smartphone technology. So could we use an app on the young person's phone to help them transfer what they learn in session back to their home, their school, and their community life? So we think these kind of 3 pieces of technology working together provide something potentially very powerful for a young person who's experiencing mental health difficulty. We weren't just interested, though, in that. We were thinking about, could we use technology to make ideas in psychology and in mental health more accessible to young people? And the intervention that we wanted to deliver through the computer game was essentially this. This is a diagram of the cognitive therapy model as developed by Beck. And the problem that we wanted to use technology to help us with in this is that I think if we as a group of people sat around and said, could we design a more the most unfriendly type of intervention imaginable for 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, could we do a worse job than design a cognitive model of intervention for them? Because the cognitive model comes from an adult-orientated approach to intervention. It requires you to notice that often just below your conscious relationship between the thinking, your feeling, and your behaviour, to become aware of that, to reflect on that and think about if your thinking is in some way biased and unhelpful, or if your thinking is in some way accurate about the world that you're living in, and to use your observation of those many observations of your thinking, feeling, behaviour relationship to notice how your memory system works, how your attention system works, what you do if you encounter something that's ambiguous, and ultimately to use those observations of that thought, feeling, behaviour relationship to identify a core belief which fuels your anxiety and fuels your low mood. So it requires a lot of this thinking about your thinking about your kind of underlying core belief type thinking and how that's affecting your feelings and your behaviour. And that's in the language of developmental psychology, what we refer to as metacognition. Now, I do find that a really, really challenging thing to do. But asking an 8, 9, or 10-year-old to engage in that level of metacognition is not a very sensible thing for us to do. So we were interested in, could we use technology to make this very effective type of intervention more accessible and more understandable to children. So we turned to the developmental psychology literature to try and develop the content of the cognitive behavioural program that went into our CBT computer game. And I'll make reference to each of these different people and the various theories that they've put forward as I describe some of the content of the game. But we were interested in what do we know about the cognitive development of children that would influence how we deliver the CBT game? What do we know about the importance of social cognition for how children think about things? What do we know about how children learn through a zone of proximal development and from the observation of others? So they were essentially the ideas that we were trying to combine with a CBT approach and embed into the content of our computer game as we developed it. But the child would experience is this. Those ideas are packaged sensibly, delivered through our CBT program and available to them as they leave a therapy session and go back to their homeschool and community life through our app. So what does that look like? Well, the game looks something like this. So this is our Pesky game for children with anxiety or low mood. We thought it was important. Computer games give you a lot of scope to do things which are nice and engaging for young people. So one of the first things that we did was we tried to design avatars that were young people friendly, that represented different genders, different racial groups, that children could choose an avatar who they felt comfortable represented themselves as they enter the game world. The other thing that we decided to do in the game too is that they give you a wonderful opportunity for the measurement of the difficulties that somebody is experiencing. So when a young person plays a game for the first time, they're asked would they like to take a quiz. And the quiz that they take in the first time is the revised children's anxiety and depression scale. So that's one of the children's IAP measures, recommended measures for the assessment of anxiety or mood in young people. So a young person completes that measure through a quiz if they would like to on the first day of the game. And the nice thing about technology is rather than having to come back a week later when the therapist had time to score up the results of that and tell them what the outcome was from something a week ago, they get it instantly profiled on the screen for them. So they can plan what are the areas of difficulty that they're having that they want to tackle as they play the game together. And then we also have two measures which appear at every level of the game. We have an outcome rating scale, which is how are you doing from week to week, and then we have a session rating scale at the end of the session. So did the young person find that session helpful enough? Did they understand the ideas that were being presented to them? Would they like to do more of that intervention again in the future? And these are very powerful and simple tools that help us understand the experience of the people using these interventions, but also allows them to work with their therapist to make whatever adjustments are necessary to make their intervention more effective and more focused on what are the real needs that they have. So we have these rating scales kind of built into games as well. I mentioned this idea of children's cognitive development. From a Piaget point of view in terms of development of children's cognition, the beginning of abstract thinking, as that kind of metacognition and thinking about your thinking, in a regularly developing child, we would expect to see somewhere around 12 years or onwards. And before that, children are much more concrete in their thinking. So we tried to make these kind of abstract ideas of CBT much more concrete and accessible through the characters that are in the game. So the game begins by simply introducing children to the idea of thinking, feeling, behaviour going together. And then we say to a young person that a thought, a negative automatic thought, that what you might have and might have an effect on you that you didn't notice, is not unlike a gnat or a little fly that might sting you, leave you with a bump or a bite that you didn't notice until later on. So we equate negative automatic thoughts with gnats or little flies in the game world. And then we teach children how to monitor their thinking. In the language of CBT, is how to trap a gnat. So we teach them how to do some gnat trapping. And then we build on that once they become skilled at noticing their thinking and how to restructure their thinking, or to SWOT a gnat. And then we build on that in turn, and we teach them how to understand the core belief by hunting their gnats back to their hive. So where have all these negative automated thoughts come from? And then how to challenge those thoughts by splattering their hive. And then the final level of the game has a relapse prevention component to it. So this is a concrete metaphor that unfolds through the course of the computer game as a young person plays it. The other thing that we know about children's thinking is that it's at its most sophisticated in a social context. And computer games give you a wonderful opportunity to set up a social story and a social world for a child to understand the anxiety or low mood that they're experiencing, and also to understand and play around with these CBT type of ideas. So we have in our computer game a social world and a social story that kind of, I suppose, stems over all of the content of the game. So the young person goes to Gnats Island, where they meet a world-famous explorer called David Attenborough, who thinks gnats are so extraordinary. He set up the world's first gnat lab in order to study them. And as you learn to trap a gnat or swat a gnat or hunt it back to their hive, you're working with David Attenborough and his team of explorers as you do that. And suddenly these ideas of CBT make much more sense to a young person. Okay, there's a game, I understand the game world, I understand why I'm doing this, and actually that's a much more accessible explanation of these kind of CBT principles. The fifth feature that we kind of put into the game is that we were thinking of this kind of social learning theory, that you observe something is the best way to learn how to do it. And again, computer games give you a lovely opportunity to do that. So we have a particular structure that unfolds in every level of the game. So we always start with a game character tells you a single CBT idea for that level of the game. That is, we're going to teach you how to trap a gnat. And then we illustrate it with a fictitious previous player who's had difficulties similar to yours and has used that idea before you. So you see a game character use the idea. And then the game character says to the young person, how does that idea apply to you? And the young person has to talk to the therapist in order to work out how does that idea apply to the anxiety or low mood that I'm currently experiencing. And that's where the shared discussion and the shared kind of use of the program begins to emerge. So the young person and the therapist work out how that idea applies to this particular young person. And then the young person tells the game character, this applies to me in the following way, and the game character says, that's great, why don't you put that into practice between now and the next time you come back using the app or a workbook alternatively if they prefer to do that. So we have this social learning kind of model kind of embedded in each section of the program. And I said, it's played with your therapist. So we deliberately did that because we want the support of a person who's trained in these cognitive behavioural principles to support a young person think it through and apply it to themselves. So in essence, they're this zone of proximal development. We can think much more sophisticated if someone helps us think things through in this way. Playing with a therapist also allows you then also to have all of those benefits of a therapeutic relationship. And what we've also found, although we didn't kind of think of this originally just because we weren't kind of clever enough, is that it doesn't really matter who you play the game with. So particularly with younger children, the therapist can play with a young person and a parent or a carer. So you can be creative in terms of who are the people who are involved in the execution of the game itself. So the contents, as I said, are we have different areas of a 3D game world that the young person goes to explore, and they meet different characters, and they learn different CBT ideas as they go through each of those areas. So in level number 1, they go to the thoughts, feelings, and behaviours lab, and they meet a character called Professor Alana Carr, who teaches them that there are some negative thoughts and some positive thoughts that go together. So they explore those kind of ideas. In levels 2 and 3, they meet a character who's kind of like a Steve Irwin type character. We're thinking, who would be brave enough to be in the wild trapping gnats? And we thought we need to have someone kind of special doing that. So you meet the Steve Irwin type character, who's called Scott, and he introduces you into the idea of gnat trapping. And he introduces you to different species of gnats or different styles of negative automatic thinking. So he introduces you to these styles, and you, your therapist, work out, do these styles apply to you or not, and then you try and notice them from session to session. In session number 4, then you meet Shona, who's the game character, whose examples you've been seeing throughout the program, and she teaches you 4 gnat swatting questions, so how to challenge your negative automatic thinking. And then in levels 5 and 6, you hunt those gnats back to their hive with help of a character called Kirsten and a dog called Pesky Pup, who helps you sniff out what they have in common. And then you can see, is that hive a real accurate perception of who you are, or should you kind of alter that in some way? And then on level number 7, do a relapse prevention part of the program. So again, we're thinking the best way to manage your anxiety or your low mood in the future is to have a healthy life. and have a clear plan of what are those kind of positive things that you and the people you care for want to have kind of embedded as a core part of your day-to-day life. So, in essence, we get that kind of cognitive behaviour therapy kind of intervention delivered through the computer game in that way. A lot of what I've described so far is that focusing on that cognition component, and there is also behavioural change associated with that as the person explores those ideas from session to session. But we also then, at each level of the programme, have an opportunity for the player to go meet a character called Beach Dude. And Beach Dude teaches you relaxation, mindfulness, or activity scheduling skills. So at the end of each level of the game, you have an opportunity to go and meet Beach Dude, and with your therapist, you pick out what's an appropriate skill for this young person for this level of the game to do. So there's some nice kind of video kind of instructions that kind of go with that as well. So that's the main content of the game. But the opportunity is provided by technology as well to support a young person as they transfer what they're learning in session back to their home, school, and the community life through kind of smartphone technology. So we have an app that's associated with a computer game called Pesky gNATs, or Pesky gNATs app. Again, it's available for young people for free through the iTunes or Google Play Store. The content is locked down when they initially download it. They need an access code from the therapist in order to access the content. And for us, we're just trying to be responsible in terms of the content, that we didn't have kind of like a free-for-all semi-part of a CBT program that was kind of open and may not be used properly. So the young person, it's free for them to download the app and they can kind of use it then. It has all of their between-session therapy tasks. It has a reminder of the content of what they've learned session by session. All of the relaxation and mindfulness skills are also embedded within the app as well. And also we've put in 3 fun games for them. And the games only unlock if you've done your between-session therapy tasks. So it's a behavioural reward for you to complete that. So we have some nice stuff embedded into that. So we hope this is a much more engaging way for a young person to do their homework, essentially, between sessions. Not everybody has a smartphone, so we also have a PDF, which is a hard copy manual, which has the same content in it that a therapist can give to a young person to use as well. This is our website, peskynats.com, and you can access our program through that. You simply register with us, and you can access there's about 7 hours of training on how to use the program and to prepare a person for how to use it. They can access the program itself through the website, and also that's where the therapist generates unlock codes for the young person to use the app. As I've said, we want to make things available on a sustainable, not-for-profit basis. So compared to most other technology kind of systems, I'm not trying to sell it to you or anything, but we are giving it away for free practically. There's a once-off license payment of £150 for each therapist who wants to use it. So you can use it with as many clients as you like, you never have to renew that license. So it's a very, very cheap, kind of an accessible thing, and we just use that money to keep our website going and pay your insurance and those kind of things. And that gives you that access to the game, our training, and the unlock codes for the app. So if you're interested in following up and learning more about Pesky gNATs, you can find it through our website there. So, take your seats and start. So this could be an early end to the presentation. In my nervousness, I can't remember.
We've been, how ironic actually, in a tech
In a
talk.
tech, it's inevitable, isn't it?
Tech is,
They'll keep us.
and nothing you can do from the back there. No.
It's handy to have a joke handy or routine to build it.
Unfortunately, I can't say.
Practice some mindfulness.
We could do that. Hopefully we'll get that. Maybe if we could exit that or start it again.
Could you restart it for us? And then navigate to that slide.
So hopefully this gives you this idea that we can use these technologies not just to make things that are, not just to make things accessible to young people or make them attractive for young people to use, but that we genuinely can take some of these difficulties. In this case, what I've been trying to argue is this adult-orientated metacognitive nature of cognitive therapy, and make those ideas much more accessible for a young person. So the technology itself isn't just something that's shiny and attractive, but actually purposeful in its delivery. So we seem to be going again, right? Right. So, brilliant. Thank you very much. So the third point that brings us on to, that I'd like to illustrate, is about the evidence for these programs. It's very difficult to be involved in a project like this because you have to design the technology, you have to get someone to pay for it, which is very expensive, and then you have to kind of develop the evidence that supports does it work or not, and do all the other things in your job too. But we do have an obligation to develop research that shows that these programs work. We start with evidence-based approaches, so something like the cognitive model we know works quite well. We embed it in a piece of technology like this, but then we need to see does it work or not. So just on this question of developing evidence in relation to these technology, I just want to tell you about a third game in our series, which is the Feel Good Island. So this is a CBT game for adults with an intellectual disability who also have clinically significant anxiety or low mood. We were approached by a service that is for adults with an intellectual disability with mental health difficulties who wanted to use the children's version of Pesky with their adult clients. And they said, we're thinking of doing this, is that a good idea? And to be honest, I felt very uncomfortable with that. I think that's a terrible idea. I think if I was an adult, I don't want to be playing a children's game. So we want to, and I think the purpose and point of these kind of technologies is that the player, whether that's a child or an adult, should have an experience that this was designed for me. It actually speaks to my needs and my experiences. So instead of saying, yes, go ahead and do that with the children's game, what we decided to do is that we would build a version just for that service to use, and we would evaluate whether it was effective or not. And we used some kind of older software that we have in order to do that. So we built this game, Feel Good Island. And as you can see, the content is very similar to the children's game because it is a delivery of the cognitive model. We have understanding the cognitive model, monitoring your thinking, understanding negative thinking, restructuring your thinking, understanding core beliefs, and challenging those core beliefs, combined with a relaxation or mindfulness skill in terms of the content of the game. So in essence, we're taking that cognitive model and we're trying to deliver it through a computer game. And for this version of the game, we don't have an app, we just have a hard copy manual for the person to use, and that's just a resource issue for us. So we've just published a pilot randomized controlled trial based on the Feel Good Island, and very kindly the Learning Disabilities Elf has blogged about it today, so that if you want to follow up and read some more about the study, you could do that. And this was the outcome of the trial. In that service, there were 104 service users, and we assessed them for eligibility into the study, so that is that they're presenting mental health difficulty, have to be clinically significant anxiety or low mood, and there were 52 people who met those criteria, and we randomly assigned them to play the prototype version of the Feel Good Island with a clinical psychologist, or to get treatment as usual at that service, which mostly was medication. Or some kind of supportive kind of counselling that they were receiving. And we've 3 time points of data. Time 1, the equivalent of the end of our intervention, which is after 7 weeks, and then a 3-month follow-up as well. So we have ended up with 24 and 25 people respectively in the Feel Good Island or the treatment as usual groups. We used kind of primary outcome measures for anxiety and low mood, the Glasgow Anxiety Scale for people with an intellectual disability, or the Glasgow Depression Scale for people with a learning disability. And the groups, in terms of the characteristics of participants across the 2 groups, were equivalent in terms of their age, the level of intellectual disability, which was mild or moderate presentation, and whether or not they were receiving psychotropic medication was equivalent across the 2 groups. So this is what happened. The red group is treatment as usual, and the blue line represents the Feel Good Island group. These are the scores on the Glasgow Anxiety Scale. The blue line represents the clinical cutoff. So you can see both groups were in the clinical range at time 1, and that the treatment as usual group are unchanged at time 2 and at 3 months follow-up. We see improvement in the feel-good island group from time 1 to time 2, and then at 3 months follow-up, they continue to improve again, and they're just on the cusp, on average as a group, on the cusp of the normal range. So for us, this is a really positive finding. It would seem to suggest that this is an effective intervention for these people. But what we really liked about it was that improvement from post-intervention to 3-month follow-up, because there was no intervention in between those 2 time points. This is a learning disabled population generalising their learning and managing their anxiety effectively over the course of that time. So that would seem to suggest that there was something effective about what they were learning through the intervention. And we found that those changes, when we look at subscales of the Glasgow anxiety scale, were cognitive, their worries reduced, and also physiological in terms of their bodily sensations related to their anxiety also improved over the course of that time. The depression outcome was interesting. We didn't find that the game effectively helped people manage their depression. So the simplest explanation is that it doesn't work. We need to go back to the drawing board in terms of designing the content of that part of the program. However, it is a small study, and as you can see here, they were at time 1, they were in the depressed rate, but they were just on the cusp of depression. So there isn't a huge amount of room for them to go. So it may be that the study was too small. Or the level of depression wasn't significant enough for an intervention to be effective. So we've got a couple of potentially competing explanations there. As I say, the most likely of which is that it didn't work. So what I hope this illustrates is that there is an onus on us and an obligation and an evidence base to demonstrate that these programs can be an effective thing for people to use to help them manage their mental health difficulties. The fourth point that I'd like to make is this one, which is that these programs have huge potential. I'd just like to very briefly tell you about a game that we're currently working on, which is a trauma-related game. So this is Pesky, that's a trauma recovery island. And what we have here is the Ehlers and Clark CBT model of trauma. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a game that reflects this model to understand your trauma and your trauma experience, and to use that model effectively for an intervention if you're a child, and to use that being delivered through a computer game. So in the Ehlers and Clark model, as I understand it, is that in relation to their traumatic experience, the person has an experience of a current threat. So that might be through some kind of intrusive experience that they may have, or some kind of arousal, or kind of strong emotion related to their past trauma experience. And that's perceived as a current threat for the individual. And they make sensible steps to try and manage that. So they use strategy to control that intrusion. So for example, they might engage in a great deal of avoidance, and they avoid situations that trigger a trauma-related experience for them. And that kind of intrusive nature and present nature of their traumatic experience comes from a difference in how trauma memories are processed by individuals when they experience them. So something about the nature of trauma memories is different, that we experience them in this present way. We tend not to process them fully, so therefore they're real, current, and recurring for us. And they may lead to a negative self-appraisal as a consequence. So this is the Ehlers and Clark trauma model. So what we're trying to do at the moment, or what we're doing at the moment, is we're building a much bigger game world than the original Pesky game world, where we're trying to have different areas of that island which are associated with different elements of that Ehlers and Clark model related to trauma. So we have some areas of the island which are about trying to understand the nature of trauma and how it has an impact on us. And then we have other areas of the island which help you with different things. So there's about 20 different game levels in this version of the program. And the idea here is that rather than a young person having to pay sequentially the 20 different levels, with the therapist, they simply pick a pathway through the intervention that's sensible for any given young person. So if a difficulty for the young person is around the strategies that they've used to cope with their trauma, maybe through kind of restricting their behaviour or avoidance in some way, we have elements of the game where you reclaim your life. So you do graded exposure by visiting that part of the island. Or if it's emotion regulation, that you visit a part of the island that teaches you emotion regulation skills. We have a film archive on the new kind of extended version of the game world where you reprocess your trauma memories. So you meet a film archivist whose archive is in rooms, and as you help him restore his films and his film from archive, you restore your memory, and you reprocess and retell your trauma-related stories like that. And if required, you have the opportunity to do kind of some cognitive behavioural work similar to the content of Pesky gNATs, which is specific to trauma kind of processing. So we're at a good stage of advance in the design of this game, so we hope then that we'll begin to make it available and that we will evaluate it too. But we hope that it will have some of those characteristics of making these models more accessible and understandable to young people and having that very nice kind of user-friendly feel to them. And that supportive therapeutic engagement, which we think is a vital part of an intervention. So there are 4 points that I hoped to make to you today, something hopefully you can take away with you, how to use these interventions in a way that solves problems in intervention delivery, some of the evidence behind them, and also some of their future potential. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Gary. So we have 2 minutes, 3 minutes for questions. I know you're all dying to get away. Got one question here. Would you mind waiting for the glamorous assistant with the roving light?
Hi, could I ask if the Rebellion plans at all to make something like this available to children and adolescents in general to promote kind of mental well-being? And the reason I'm asking is probably 3 things I thought about during your presentation. When my daughter was at primary school, I was training in DBT, and it ended up that she taught all her friends the techniques that I was kind of learning and teaching her. I watched my young grandson, he's only 8, playing a sum dog game, and it was all about adding up, and he was absolutely brilliant at it. And I thought if he'd sat down with a book in front of him, he would never have been as engaged. Another thing, I've done a lot of anger and violence treatment with patients, and nearly all the time patients all have said to me, I wish I'd learned this when I was younger, because I thought my thoughts were my thoughts and I just had to act on them. And I think a lot of the patients that I see in a high secure environment, they've not had that kind of a moral compass or guidance. But I think for children in general, I think it would be excellent.
Thank you very much. I agree with you. We would love to see the development of something like that. We kind of like the idea that the games are experienced by a young person that this was properly designed for me. So I think we would need to modify the ones that we have to do that. But I think why wouldn't there be a healthy cognitive skills game that a young person could play? With the mindfulness game, there is a computer game that goes with that. So you learn how to do the skill from playing the mindfulness game, and then you have the app to support your practice of it. And we see that very much as a game. We're interested in teachers using that in schools, parents using that at home, kind of teach those kind of self-regulation skills to young people. So I'm glad to hear you think that, because we think that too.
Brilliant talk, Gary. Fantastic product. I love it. You remind me of Dennis Waterman, who wrote and sang the theme tune in Minder, as somebody who thinks about what to put in the app and then develops the app and then gets the app out and researches the app. I wondered what you thought about the kind of potential biases of doing all of that stuff.
Yeah. But that reminds me to hit next on the slide and say thank you to all of these people. Stop together. I wasn't giving you the wrong impression that it's just me. There is a large team of us that are involved in that. Myself and David Coyle, who's a computer scientist, who are the main kind of people behind it. We have a team of kind of students and researchers who kind of work with us, and clinicians who work with us too. So there is a large team of us. But I think your point is essentially this. As I say, as you develop an intervention and you develop your evidence base, what you want to do is, I suppose, get some traction by us saying, here's a study, here's what we've built, and then other people take it and break it and research it. So that's what we would hope would be the next step, that other people will do research on our programs, or have a look at our programs and say, actually, I really don't like that one. I'm going to build something that's improved in this way. So I think that's that kind of cumulative scientific process. So we hope that will happen with this.
I have one question, John.
We've sort of answered that.
Okay, right.
Okay, no, I think my question was to add on that one was, how involved are young children in the process?
In the process, yeah. So the question is, how involved are young children in the process? That's always been a central part of what we've done. I mean, a lot of it has come from my own clinical work, so thinking about these techniques and trying them with children and seeing what works and what doesn't work is kind of always our starting point. But then we've done focus group research with children to find out what is it that they like. And so, for example, with the Feel Good Island game, we did that randomized control trial that I talked about, but we also did a qualitative study with everyone who played the game. So we asked them, what did you like about it, what did you not like about it, what was explained well, what was it something badly. So we're always using that, and in technology there's a great experience of that. They call it user experience. So there's a great tradition of that in technology, which is really, really helpful.
So thank you.